Welcome to Wolf Owls Publishing, your ultimate destination for werewolf romance and fated mate stories. Claim your spot in the pack by hitting subscribe, and let's get lost in the moonlight together.
Prologue. I watched as the two held each other in their arms. Her head tilted back to look up at him with a smile on her face. Even from this distance, I knew her cornflower blue eyes were looking at his green eyes. His 6 feet 3 inches frame dwarfed her 5 feet 3 inches frame. She was laughing at something he said to her. Then I saw him lift his hand to her face, gently caressing her cheek before continuing on to lightly twirl his fingers in her silvery blonde hair, which had become loose from the messy bun resting atop her head. As his fingers began pushing the loosened hair behind her ear, he placed his forehead to hers and shared a deep kiss. I should have turned away before then, but it was like watching a train wreck. It was unsettling, but I couldn't turn my eyes away. It was my own personal nightmare, the same one I envisioned repeatedly. The same one that haunted both my nights and my days. You are my forever, Rachel. I will never love another as much as I will love you. His words carried on the wind to me. And with those words, my hopes, my faith, and my very heart stopped. It was the final blow. It had taken 2 years to get here. But here I was, and there was no turning back. With that, I turned around and walked away from my future, my everything, to finally welcome the destiny I didn't choose for myself, but was chosen for me.
Chapter 1. The painful cramps had finally receded, allowing me to unfurl my sweat-slicked body from the fetal position I had been forced into for the last hour. Almost all my nights for the past 2 years had been spent in this position, sometimes multiple times a day. There were times in the beginning that I had prayed to get one single day of respite from the pain, but my prayers always fell on deaf ears. Luck was not my friend, it had become my mortal enemy for 2 long years now. The pain forced my body into itself, as if it were trying to find some sort of comfort from the burning inferno living within my abdomen. It had become my own personal tormentor, holding me in its grasp. It seemed to sneer at me in disgust as I cried out, praying for it to stop, indifferent to my promises to give anything just for a moment of peace. The pain had morphed into a living and breathing creature with its own wants and needs after so many years of enduring it, a parasite of sorts. Only after my body was leached of all energy and my will was broken did I receive any type of reprieve. By then, my body and mind involuntarily shut down, and exhaustion forced me to sleep like the dead, where all dreams died. I rolled over onto my back and stared up at the night sky. How beautiful the sky was, with all the brilliant stars shining down at me, twinkling and dancing in the midnight blue sky. I had found this small clearing in the forest as a child. It had been my place of solitude and comfort for as long as I could form memories. It was a circular clearing surrounded by spruce trees born decades before my time, the grass creating a lush, thick carpet. At least, that had been what it was in the beginning. Now it was the place I came to endure the pain. It was the place I could scream and writhe as agony tormented my body and mind, away from an audience. My dreams were no longer of hope, but of a time when the pain would no longer exist. I turned to the side and used my arms as leverage to move into a sitting position. My arms were still trembling slightly from the aftershocks, and with effort, I was finally able to stand up. My legs quaked underneath me, as if they barely had the strength to carry my weight. I swept my long black hair off my face. It had become soaked from the perspiration. I brushed myself off and looked up to the stars one last time before heading back to the pack house. I took my time returning, giving myself a chance to shake off the residual effects of the episode. This enabled me to mask it and present the facade I always used. A half hour passed before the forest began thinning out, and the house came into view. At this time of night, most pack members would be asleep. That was the case this night, except for the lone light burning in the second-story window of the Alpha's room. Silently, I crept through the backyard and entered the back door. The house was beautiful, with a rustic cabin-style design large enough to house 30 members of the Moon Meadow Pack. Smaller cabins were strewn about the thousands of acres of our territory for those with families or those who had found their mates. The main house sheltered the Alpha, his Luna, and unmated members. Technically, I was unmated, forcing me to live in the main house. But the truth was, I had a mate, someone I needed like the air I breathe, but my mate was never with me. I had known him my whole life, our childhoods were entwined. His name was Damien Blackstone, and he was the reigning alpha of my pack. He happened to be my older brother Alexander's best friend. While they were 5 years older, I had grown up following them around as their shadow, getting mixed up in whatever adventure they had planned for the day. As years passed, I became separated from them as they began their journey into adulthood, Damien being groomed for the title of Alpha and my brother for the title of Beta. At first, I was upset, not understanding why the fun had to cease, but as I matured, I understood that with the title came great responsibility. At 11, I remember seeing Damien with her for the first time. She was beautiful, her silver blonde hair cascading down her back, and her cornflower blue eyes smiling with mischief. Her name was Rachel Smithson. Her family had recently joined our pack after theirs had been devastated. She had a shy manner about her, and Damien had immediately reacted to it, protecting her with fierceness. From then on, they had been inseparable. No one doubted their love for one another, and she was considered the future Luna. It wasn't until I reached 16 that any question of their bond came into play. I still remember the day when the truth came out. I had been running out of the pack house, late for school, when I collided with Damien in the hallway. My torso pushed into his by sheer accident, and sparks immediately appeared. His hands were around my upper arms, steadying me. I looked up into his emerald green eyes, and he looked down into my pale gray ones. Our breathing hitched, and it felt as if the world stopped. I felt my inner wolf come alive. "Mate," she said. For that moment, I was jubilant. I had waited all my life for this moment, and it had finally come. I had found the other half of my soul. I had found my future, and it was Damien. For a moment, I saw the same reflected back to me in his eyes. But it was just for a moment before it quickly disappeared. "You're my mate, Damien," I stated with excitement. "That's not possible, Leilani. You know my mate is Rachel. She's your future Luna." "No, you're my mate, Damien. Didn't you feel it?" "Even if I did feel something, you know I have committed myself to Rachel. I have chosen her. I am sorry, but I have made my choice. You will find another who can love you, as I cannot. But I am your destined mate," I whispered. "I forge my own destiny, as should you, Leilani. As should you." With that, he released my arms and turned away from me. I watched as he walked away, his head down as he continued to his office. I stood there rooted, unable to move or breathe for what felt like hours. I heard a door slam shut, and with that sound came the closing of the door on everything I had ever wanted. It was the beginning of my ending.
Chapter 2. I opened the back door of the pack house, turning to close it softly until I heard the tiny click of the latch. I made as little noise as possible, hoping not to awaken anyone within. As I proceeded through the kitchen to reach the stairs, I noticed Damien and Rachel in front of the refrigerator. The only light came from the tiny bulb that flickered to life every time the door opened, illuminating the room in a soft glow. I watched as Damien held Rachel in his arms, placing a gentle kiss on her nose. I stood there for a moment, staring at the scene, before hurriedly trying to get around them before they noticed me. However, I was never that lucky. I was 3 steps from exiting the room when Rachel caught my movement and turned toward me. "Leilani, is that you? You scared me for a second there," she said. I turned my head toward them, never meeting either of their eyes directly. "Sorry," I mumbled. "Where did you just come from?" Damien asked with a touch of concern in his voice. "Outside." "Outside doing what?" "Couldn't sleep, so I ran for a little." "This late at night?" "Yeah." "By yourself?" "Yeah." "Are you okay?" "Yeah." "You sure?" "Yeah." With that, I turned back toward the stairs, hoping to end the awkward conversation. I hoped my eyes never showed my pain and that the facade I lived with was in place. I let the numbness envelope me. I could live through being numb. The pain, I could not. "Night," I stated, and proceeded to the stairs as fast as my legs could take me. As I reached the landing, I heard Damien tell Rachel how much he loved her. My facade cracked for a second, and a solitary tear slid down my face before my mask returned. I reached my bedroom, walked in, and closed the door. I pressed my back against the wood and rested my head there. Closing my eyes, I took a deep breath as I felt my stomach plummet. I always felt this slow ache after I saw them. Sometimes the panic would overcome me until I felt like I was suffocating. When those times came, I ran to my safe spot in the woods until the feeling subsided. I always returned with a plastered smile and a flippant remark. It always worked. They never had a clue. I pushed off the door and headed to my adjoining bathroom, stripping off my clothes. I turned the water on in the shower, and as I waited for it to heat up, I turned toward the mirror. I looked at my torso and saw the evidence of the pain that had been inflicted on me earlier. Deep purple bruises crisscrossed from my upper chest down to my upper thighs. When the pain first started, the bruises would heal within a few hours. But as months turned into years, my wolf had weakened. Now it took days for the bruises to heal. Soon, I knew they would be permanent reminders of the future I had lost. Only a few more months now, I said to my reflection. I had begun hiding myself under layers of clothing. I didn't want anyone to see the marks or ask questions. Each day, I felt my wolf fading a little more. Each day, I lost weight and became more listless. Makeup and clothing camouflaged my torment from the pack. It was my silent burden to endure alone. As much as I should have been angry at Damien, I could not be. The bond one had for him wanted him to be happy, even if it was not with me. At first, I didn't know what caused the debilitating misery and the bruising. It wasn't until I was doing research for a school project that I stumbled on the answer in a long-forgotten book titled The Leak and Mating Process. Although it had nothing to do with my assignment, I began reading the section on rejection. Damien had never formally rejected me, but he had never accepted me either. The book held the answers I had been craving. According to the text, the mating bond is sacred. In the event a bond is ignored, or a wolf chooses a partner who is not their destined mate, the set-aside partner experiences great hardships. If they do not succumb to the physical toll, they may become fallen, a rogue wolf with no empathy who has lost their humanity. The book explained that a rejected mate experiences physical pain during any intimate encounters their destined mate has with another. As time passes, the internal injuries intensify. When the bruising begins to last for days instead of hours, the rejected mate has only a few months left to live before they either pass away or become fallen. The only cure is for the destined mate to accept the bond fully before the transition occurs. The book had given me the answers. I had only 3 options: acceptance, insanity, or death. Knowing Damien would never choose me over Rachel, I had accepted my future. I wouldn't allow myself to become fallen and hurt those I loved. That left only one path. I wouldn't live past my 21st birthday. I had accepted this with logical precision. Once the water was hot, I stepped inside the shower. With great care, I lightly began lathering my body, my touch featherlight on the tender areas. After finishing, I stepped out and wrapped myself in a towel. I took one last glance at myself in the fogged mirror before padding into my room. I reached into my dresser and found an old, faded t-shirt that had once belonged to Damien. It was a souvenir from a time when he brought me happiness. I put it on and slid into the cool sheets of my bed, hoping to find oblivion in sleep. But I was never that lucky. Just as sleep was about to take hold, I felt the stirring of that familiar burning sensation deep within my abdomen. I forced a piece of my sheet into my mouth and clenched my teeth, stifling my own cry. I drifted into unconsciousness at the peak of the internal fire.
Chapter 3. Damien's POV. I woke to her warmth beside me, our bodies close and familiar. How many mornings had begun this way? Her legs draped over mine, my arm around her shoulders, one of us breathing steadily against the other. For years, falling asleep and waking together had been our constant. I never tired of it. Yet in the last 2 years, alongside the happiness, a quiet sense of guilt had settled deep in my mind. On rare occasions, as I lay with Rachel, Leilani's face would surface in my thoughts. Each time it happened, it felt like a betrayal, even though it was only a passing thought. There were also the long hours alone in my office, when Rachel was away visiting family or friends. In the silence, the guilt grew heavier. In those moments, the strange pull of the bond one shared with Leilani pressed into my awareness, uninvited and unwelcome. It angered me that I could not fully control my thoughts, that fate itself had tried to steer me away from the future I had chosen. I had chosen Rachel. That choice was final. There was nothing wrong with Leilani. She had grown into a confident, remarkable woman, someone any Lecan would be proud to stand beside. Had our paths been different, had I never met Rachel, I would have honored such a bond. But life had unfolded another way, and Rachel had become my present and my future. I did not regret my decision, and never would. What I did regret was the pain Leilani had endured. She had done nothing to deserve it. She deserved care, respect, and happiness, and I hoped she would one day find someone who could give her what I could not. She was destined for more, and I believed she would one day find a joy equal to the one I shared with Rachel. I still remember the day Rachel entered my life, bright and full of energy. I had watched her step out of her parents' car when her family arrived the year I turned 16, the same year my father began preparing me for leadership. Her silver blonde hair caught the sunlight, and her blue eyes were impossible to ignore. She had also been 16, carrying the quiet strength of someone who had already faced great loss. From the start, I was drawn to her kindness and resilience. Her past stirred something protective in me, and before I realized it, I had fallen in love for the first time. From that moment on, she held my attention completely. Our bond grew steadily over the years, and never once did I question my feelings for her or doubt my gratitude that she had chosen me. Rachel stirred beside me, and I looked down to see a small smile forming on her lips as her eyes opened. "Morning, love," she said, stretching comfortably. "Good morning, my heart. Did you sleep well?" "Very well, for the time you allowed me to sleep," she replied with a playful smile. I pulled her close in a gentle embrace, resting my chin against her hair. "Damien, stop," she laughed softly. "I need to use the bathroom." "All right," I said, releasing her. "But tonight is ours." "Always," she said, smiling as she stood and headed toward the bathroom. I watched her disappear behind the door and heard the shower begin. For a moment, I considered joining her, but the weight of my responsibilities pressed in. There was too much to do. I dressed quickly, slipped on yesterday's jeans and a plain black shirt, and knocked lightly on the bathroom door to let her know I was heading out. After exchanging a few words, I made my way downstairs to my office. As I reached the final step leading into the eastern wing, I saw Leilani on the opposite staircase. She glanced up, met my eyes briefly, then looked away. She hurried down the remaining steps and slipped out the front door before I could speak to her. She looked thinner than I remembered, though otherwise composed. When we had first learned that fate had linked us, I had watched her closely, worried she might struggle. At first, she seemed to carry on as usual, smiling and fulfilling her duties. Only occasionally had I noticed a flicker of sadness when she saw Rachel and me together, and I had convinced myself it was nothing lasting. I settled into my chair behind the desk, the familiar weight of duty returning. Treaties awaited my signature, reports demanded attention, and the matter of rogue activity along our borders remained unresolved. Encounters with rogues were not new, but in recent years, they had grown more dangerous. These attackers were more aggressive than any we had faced before, and we had lost warriors driving them back. I could still recall the first time I had seen them. Even in their wolf forms, something was clearly wrong. Their movements were erratic, their bodies poorly kept, their eyes vacant. There was no awareness behind their gaze, only instinct and chaos. In human form, they appeared equally unwell, weakened, and clearly suffering. The sight unsettled even seasoned fighters. I had reached out to neighboring alphas, searching for answers, wondering if some unknown illness or curse was spreading among our kind. No one had answers. All we could do was strengthen our defenses and remain vigilant. Since the attacks began, I had ordered constant patrols and reinforced our borders. That morning, yet another promising lead had collapsed into nothing. I leaned back, rubbing my face in frustration. It always seemed the same. Hope, followed by disappointment. When I opened my eyes, I gazed out the window behind my desk. Below, daily life continued. Parents guided their children toward school. Young warriors trained in the open grounds, repeating drills I knew by heart. As I watched, a lone figure caught my attention, walking toward the edge of the forest. From the way she moved, I knew it was Leilani. She paused, glanced around as if checking whether anyone was watching, then slowly turned her head. Her eyes lifted toward my window. The tinted glass hid me from view, but I saw her expression clearly. The depth of sorrow in her eyes struck me like a blow, raw and unmistakable. Then she turned away and disappeared among the trees. In that moment, I understood how wrong I had been. She had not moved on in quiet happiness after all. Chapter 4. I put my hand on the cool lacquered wood of the hand railing of the staircase. Feeling the smooth cool wood underneath my fingertips, I enjoyed the sensation. It wasn't until I was halfway down that the scent of wood and pine hit my nose and my nostrils flared. My eyes darted up quickly, and I saw him at the bottom of the staircase parallel to the one I was currently walking down. I quickly averted my eyes and rushed to the front door, hoping to avoid another awkward conversation with him. I also wanted to avoid the unnatural pull toward him that I could barely contain. My inner self yearned for his connection and affection. Each passing day, it became a test of my will not to succumb to it. But I always held back, because I knew that if I gave in, it would only be met with rejection and denial. I reached the front door and quickly closed it as I exited the house. As I stepped off the front porch, I noticed some pack warriors training some of the younger lichens in defensive skills. There was a time that I had dreamed of being one of them, following in the footsteps of my older brother, Alexander, and my best friend, Damien. But with the fading of my hopes, my dreams had changed as well. All the plans I had made when I was younger and filled with life had been cast aside the day I read that book. What could one dream for in the future if there was no future for them? So my dreams had vanished and evaporated from where they came. Now, I lived with a clock in my consciousness that I knew would one day stop ticking along with my heart. Okay guys, do one more rep of 50. I heard my brother say, before he noticed me and walked toward me. Hey sis. Hey Alex, I said to him with a smile. So what are your plans for the day? Oh, you know, doing this and that. Is that right? So you aren't going to tell me again, are you? I just answered him with the short, carefree laugh I had perfected in the last 2 years and shook my head no. If you were having a secret meeting with someone special, you better tell me, because I want to meet him. You understand? I quickly covered up the pain he inadvertently caused me with the same short, carefree laugh I used before. Alex, you know you would be the first to know if that happened. But alas, my dear brother, I have not had the pleasure of finding my partner, thus ruining your plans of interrogation and overprotective actions toward the person fate has chosen for me. As I stated this, I gave an eloquent bow to my brother, extending my arm out and bending at my waist with my back straight. Laughing and shaking his head slightly, my brother regarded me. Leilani, you, my dear sibling, will make someone very lucky one day. You know, if mom and dad were still alive, they would be just as proud of you as I am. You will find him one day. There go those emotions I was warning you about, Alex, I flippantly stated, hoping to change the subject and continue on to my safe area in the woods. Sometimes I worry if you were dropped on the head as a baby, Lay. Love you too, bro, love you too. Get out of here and have a good day, sis. See you at dinner, yeah? Wouldn't miss it for the world. You too, I said to him as I turned away and began heading toward the line of trees that marked the entrance to my beloved meadow. As I was about to reach the trees, I turned around and gave one last look up to Damien's office, giving in to my heart's craving to see his face before I left. But again, luck was never on my side. He would never be there looking back at me as I had hoped. I would always be looking back at my own reflection or empty space. I was alone. Chapter 5. I had spent the entire day in my meadow, enjoying the solitude. Only when I was alone was I able to fully be who I had become. I could allow the walls to come down then and let the dam of tears I always barely had under control release into a torrent. They would cascade down my face like rapids in a river, unyielding and intense. Here, I could let the pain take over my body before building the walls again brick by brick, until there was no trace of the agony I bore alone. No one else was there to help support the weight that was slowly crushing me. Once the sun began to set, I got up and began the trek back to the pack house for dinner. I wanted to enjoy the last few years, or even months, I had left with my brother, the only living blood relative I had left. We had lost our mom and dad when I was 15, and my brother was 20. We had always viewed our parents as indestructible anchors. In a single moment, we had lost them and been cast adrift. Overnight, my brother had to grow up. He went from kid to guardian in the blink of an eye. He became my pillar of strength and my interim parental figure. Without him, I would have been much worse off. He was the reason I was holding on to my sanity. He was the only reason for me to hold on. My brother, my protector, my family. I had been so happy for him when he found his mate, Abby. I hadn't even flinched when he asked if it would be okay for me to move into the main house so that Abby could move into the house we once shared as siblings. For him, I would do anything. Even if that meant subjecting myself to more pain by being closer to Damien. My brother had given up so much for me for years, I could give up a little comfort for his benefit. As I stepped out of the forest, I noticed that the backyard had holiday lighting strung about the sparse trees. There were numerous tables that appeared to be able to seat the entire pack of over 100 lichens. In the front was a platform built about 3 feet from the ground with a round table that looked to seat only 6 people. It was covered in red linen with decorative plates and a beautiful centerpiece of exotic flowers in red, gold, and white. It seemed to be a celebration of some kind, but I didn't remember being told of any upcoming events at the weekly pack meeting. It was too extravagant to have been quickly thrown together. I watched curiously as final touches were being applied, until I spotted my brother approaching me from the back door. "Lei, there you are. I have been looking for you everywhere. You have about 30 minutes before the party starts. You need to get ready." "Wear something semi-formal," I heard him say, while ushering me inside. "What's going on, Alex? What's this all about? Did I zone out at the meeting last week?" "Oh no, 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 no. This was a surprise and a secret from the pack. Damien set it up and didn't tell anyone until a few hours ago. I would have told you to give you more time, but I couldn't find you. Go now, get ready, and be down in 30 minutes, no later." I ran up the stairs to my room as fast as I could. I momentarily panicked, realizing I had nothing to wear, until I noticed a beautiful black dress lying on my bed. The material was covered in beads and rhinestones, and the light twinkled off it. I picked up the note to discover my brother had bought it for me when he went into town for a last-minute tux. He always thought of me, and knowing me so well, he had found the perfect dress. I quickly hopped into the shower. Looking at the clock, I realized I had only 20 minutes left. I donned the dress, relieved to find that the low back did not reveal the faint marks from that morning, which had already begun to fade. I lightly touched up my face with powder, a bit of pink blush, and black liquid liner for a thick cat-eye look. I filled in my eyebrows, highlighted the arches, and applied mascara to my lashes. Finally, I chose a deep burgundy red lipstick. With 10 minutes to go, I loosely curled my hair, pinning one side up with a diamond clip my mother had owned. I rushed to my closet and chose red heels over black. Realizing I was already 3 minutes late, I exited my room and proceeded downstairs, careful not to trip. As I reached the landing, I noticed the foyer was filled with pack members mingling in their finery. Everyone looked so handsome and beautiful. For the first time in a long time, I genuinely smiled at the elegance around me, truly happy for a moment to be part of this group. As I made my way through the crowd, members of the pack greeted me and commented on how beautiful I looked. I smiled back, thanked them, and returned the compliments. Finally, I spotted my brother with Abby. "Alex. There you are. Thank you so much for the dress." "You're welcome, but you should be thanking Abby for choosing it. I just paid for it." "Abby, thank you so much. I love it." "You are very welcome, Leilani. I just knew it would be perfect for you. You look breathtaking." I blushed. "Abby, you look radiant, and I am so glad my brother found you." I hugged both of them, placing a kiss on their cheeks. As I released them, I noticed the pack members had ceased talking and were looking upward. Damien and Rachel were slowly descending the staircase. Midway down, both stopped and smiled at one another. Damien leaned down and placed a chaste kiss on her lips. With that simple action, my happiness dissipated. My brother noticed my mood shift and the slight tensing of my body before I was able to mask my pain. A worried expression crossed his face. I shook my head slightly, plastered a smile on my lips, and turned back toward Damien. I had no choice but to look. I could not control my reactions when it came to him. He was the light in my darkness. He was dressed in a single-button tux with a crisp white shirt, the top 2 buttons left open, and his hair fashionably disheveled. He was devastatingly handsome. I then looked at Rachel in her white silk dress. They looked the picture of a perfect couple, and it broke my already fractured heart further. Welcome, all of Mountain Meadow Pack. On behalf of Rachel and me, I want to thank you for attending this celebration on such short notice. If you can all continue to the backyard, dinner will be served shortly, and I will announce the reason behind this affair, Damien stated in a strong voice. The pack members began moving toward the tables. I was trying to locate my own spot when I heard Abby calling for me. "Leilani. You're up here with Alex and me." She was standing at the table on the platform, the one decorated more extravagantly than the others. Confused, I walked over. Sure enough, I saw my name card next to Alex's. I looked to the other side to see who would be sitting next to me, and my heart plummeted. Sitting there was Damien's name, and next to his was Rachel's. "I had Rachel seat you up here with us," Alex said. "I thought you would rather sit next to Abby and me tonight. I know how you feel about sitting with people you don't quite know. I hope you don't mind, Lay." I took a deep, fortifying breath and turned to my brother with a fake smile. "No, I do not mind. Thank you for always looking out for me, Alex. You will never know how much I love you. Always remember that, okay?" He looked at me, a bit confused. "Of course I will remember that. Besides, you're going to tell me every day for the next 50 years or more." I smiled and nodded, knowing that wasn't the truth but wanting to protect him for as long as I could. I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up, indicating Damien was close. I turned and saw him and Rachel walking to the table. Our eyes locked for an instant. For a second, I thought I saw a reflection of my own feelings in his eyes, but I averted my gaze, knowing it was just an illusion. I had recently started to experience tricks of the mind due to my situation. I had to be careful not to let anyone know something was wrong. I hoped that before things deteriorated, I would be gone, so as not to be a burden. I knew Alex and Abby would be sad, but they had each other. "Evening, Alex, Abby, Leilani," I heard him state. All 3 of us turned and greeted them back. I watched as he slid Rachel's chair out for her. He did not do the same for me, leaving me to seat myself. Alex did the same for Abby. This night was sure to be taxing on my nerves. I would deal with the fallout later, in private. For now, it was time to play my part as best as I could. Chapter 6. Damien's POV. I was standing at the top of the stairs, watching my pack members mingling below, waiting for Rachel to join me so that we could make our entrance. She was always 5 minutes late for everything, and this time would be no different. It was one of the many quirks I had learned about her in our 5-year relationship. We had planned this party for weeks. She thought it was a surprise for Alex to ask Abby for her hand in marriage, but little did she know, it was her own engagement that would be announced soon. I tucked my hand into my pocket and enclosed my fingers around the small black velvet box temporarily residing there. I needed to make sure I had it, even though I had checked at least a half-dozen times before. Anxiety ratcheted through my body for a second before I took a fortifying breath to settle my nerves. That's when I noticed Leilani at the top of the stairs, directly across from me. I watched as she rushed down, the train of her dress in her hands, and red shoes peeking out from under the black fabric. The light from the overhead chandelier reflected off the beads on her dress, reminding me of a star-filled night sky. As she reached the landing, she turned her head left and right as if searching for someone. I took in her beauty. I had always thought her pretty, but I had never allowed myself the luxury of actually seeing what she had grown into. She was breathtaking, with an innate grace to her movements. Her heritage gave her a unique, exotic look, complemented by thick, shining brown hair. Her frame was petite but statuesque, and at 5 feet 9 inches, she was taller than most females in the pack. If I were kissing her, I would not have to lean down as far as I had to with Rachel. I wondered what it would be like to do that. Knowing I shouldn't be having those thoughts about anyone other than Rachel, I felt guilt rising within me. Before I could process that guilt, I watched Leilani weave through the crowd. She stopped for a moment, smiling and blushing at whatever the pack members said to her. I noticed unmated males looking at her with interest as she passed, and it unsettled my inner wolf. A quick tide of jealousy crashed over me. My hands clenched the railing, and I felt my composure slipping until I felt a hand on my shoulder. Rachel. There was Rachel to think about. I had to get these feelings under control and find a permanent solution for the bond that drew me elsewhere. I turned to the woman I believed was the love of my life and smiled. "Baby, are you ready to head down?" she asked. "Of course, heart." I extended my arm to escort her down the stairs. We took the first couple of steps, and my guilt returned. Here I was with the woman I loved, having only minutes ago felt a pull toward someone else. Turning slightly to Rachel, I gave her a small kiss on the lips, hoping to cement my devotion to her. I leaned down and whispered in her ear. "You look ravishing tonight. I can't wait to get you out of that dress later." She giggled and blushed, and then I noticed the entire pack had stopped talking. Their eyes looked up at us expectantly. As we continued down, I welcomed them all. "Welcome, all of Mountain Meadow Pack. On behalf of Abby and me, I want to thank you for attending this celebration on such short notice. If you can all continue to the backyard, dinner will be served shortly, and I will announce the reason behind this affair." As the pack began filing out, Rachel and I hung back to let the crowd disperse. When we exited the back door, I scanned the area to make sure everything was in order. I noticed Leilani standing next to Alex at the table on the platform. My eyebrows furrowed in agitation. "Baby, I hope you didn't mind, but I sat Leilani next to you," Rachel said. Her brother asked if she could sit with us. I know she holds no official title, but she is by herself, and Alex worried about her sitting in the unmated section. You know how protective he is. "Are you mad?" "Of course not. I just wasn't expecting it, is all. There is nothing you can do that could make me angry or stop me from loving you." I watched a look of wariness filter across her face for a split second. I didn't understand what it was about, but before I could question it, Rachel tugged at my arm to walk toward the table. I realized it wasn't the first time I had seen that cautious look on her face over the years, but I had never really questioned it until now. Deciding to talk to her about it later, we continued to our table. I noticed Leilani had her back to us, and the plunging nature of her dress caught my eye. Frustrated with my own reactions, I clenched my teeth. As we stepped onto the platform, I greeted the others. I slid the chair out for Rachel, and while pushing it in, I noticed Leilani standing to the side awkwardly, watching the couples before taking her own seat. A small, sad smile touched her lips before she cast her gaze downward, staring at her hands in her lap. Chapter 7. I sat there, not really listening to the conversation between Alex and Damien. My mind was preoccupied with maintaining an indifferent facade, forcing my body not to react to Damien's presence. It took everything in me to keep my feelings in check. I hadn't been this close to him in over a year. I had realized that I had to stay as far away from him physically as possible. Our inner natures would naturally seek each other out, and I had to respect the choice he had made for his life, regardless of the pull between us. I only heard bits and pieces of the discussion flowing around me, something about rogue attacks and contacting other alphas. In an effort to distract myself, I watched the waitstaff begin filing out of the back door. Each carefully balanced plates for the starter course, while others filled glasses. Our designated waiter was already making his rounds at our table. "Good evening, everyone. Your appetizers will be here momentarily. Would any of you care for a beverage? We have water, wine, soda, juice, and tea this evening." I watched him take the orders until his eyes fell on mine. He had warm brown eyes and dirty blonde hair. He smiled warmly at me, his gaze friendly and attentive. "Water, please?" I asked. "Thanks, my name is Thomas, miss. Might I add, you look beautiful tonight." "Thank you, Thomas," I replied with a smile and a slight blush. I noticed Damien tense beside me, looking at me with a scowl. I wasn't sure what I had done to annoy him, but his expression was clear. The last thing I wanted to do was upset him. I would have to be more careful. Thomas and the other waiters returned with drinks and appetizers. The conversations of the pack became low murmurs as everyone began eating. The first course was a wedge salad, followed by a choice of lobster bisque or squash soup. I opted for the bisque, as I had never tried it before. I had promised myself to experience things I never had before my time was up. I was surprised by the rich flavor. It was one of the most delicious things I had ever tasted. Halfway through the course, I noticed Damien still looking at me with that same frustrated expression. Immediately, I lost my appetite, set my spoon down, and waited for the next course. "Is the bisque not good, Lay?" my brother asked. "No, it's quite good. I just don't want to overeat," I stated, looking down at my hands. "Are you sure you're okay? You seem off tonight." I sighed, knowing I was causing him worry. "Yes, of course. Just a little overwhelmed with the crowd. You know how I am." "Right, I forgot you get a little skittish. So what did you do today since I couldn't find you?" he added, teasingly. "I was just roaming the territory, letting my inner wolf run for a bit. She's been feeling restless lately." "You should get out more," Alex said. "I mean, with the way Thomas has been looking at you, I doubt he would be against taking you out sometime." I blushed, but I heard a sharp intake of breath from Damien. I glanced at him to see his reaction. "Leilani, you cannot go to the woods on your own right now. There are dangerous rogues about," he said, a nerve ticking in his jaw. He was obviously furious. "I am sorry, Damien," I stated, looking back at my lap. "No need to apologize. I was planning on letting the pack know they must only leave in groups of 2 or more until the rogue issue is dealt with." I gave a short nod in understanding and sat quietly. The rest of dinner went by in a blur. I was so deep in my own thoughts that I barely noticed the final course. As the staff cleared the dishes, Damien pushed back his chair and stood up. He tapped a knife against his glass, gaining the attention of the entire pack. Once there was silence, he reached out to Rachel and lifted her to stand next to him, his arm around her waist. My heart plummeted. "Rachel, and I want to thank you again for joining us. We hope you have enjoyed the meal," Damien stated. Rachel put this affair together, and I couldn't be more proud of the partner I have chosen. I told her this was a surprise for Alex and Abby, when in truth, it was her own surprise. Rachel placed a hand over her mouth, happy tears collecting in her eyes. Then Damien moved away from her and knelt down on one knee. My breathing became erratic as I fought to remain upright and show no emotion. "Rachel, my heart, my love. I have spent the last 5 years looking upon your beautiful face. I would be honored if you would share the rest of your life with me. Will you do me the honor of marrying me and becoming my true partner in every sense of the word? Oh, Damien. Yes, of course I will. I watched the tears of happiness slide down her cheek. Simultaneously, I felt my heart shatter. Black spots began invading my vision, and my head felt light. I shook my head slightly, trying to maintain control over the panic rising inside me. Then, as if a switch had been flipped, a numbness took over. My logical side took command, and all emotion ceased. I took a breath, stiffened my spine, and turned toward the newly engaged couple to clap for them. I didn't realize a single tear had escaped and was trailing down my face, nor did I realize that my brother, Abby, and Damien were all watching me. Damien's POV. As I held Rachel in an embrace, I saw Leilani. Her back was stiff as she clapped for us, but then I noticed the lone tear on her cheek. I looked into her eyes and saw something that caused a shattering effect inside of me. My inner self reacted with a sense of shared pain, calling out to offer her comfort, but I pushed that feeling down for the sake of the woman in my arms. Leilani's eyes looked empty, as if the very life had been drained from her. There was absolutely nothing there. I had only seen a look like that once before, and it made me shiver. Chapter 8. Leilani's POV. I don't remember standing up and walking to the back door to go up to my room. I have no idea how I got from the table to here. I just know that I am here, taking one look back, one final look at the future I have been denied. The residual hope that had lived deep within my soul was finally dying its slow death, leaving nothing but numbness in the aftermath. I looked back at the only person who felt like home to me, Damien. I had known there was no hope for us, but my inner self and my heart had hung on for the slim chance that things might change. Only now, with his engagement to Rachel, had I finally set that hope free. I watched as the pack, my brother, and Abby surrounded the happy couple, offering congratulations and hugs. It was just too much. I needed to get away. I turned and slowly made my way through the kitchen, the sounds of plates being washed and people talking sounding as if they were coming from a long tunnel. I climbed the staircase and walked to my bedroom door. Resting my hand on the knob, I leaned forward and placed my forehead against the cool wood, letting tears fall before going inside. As I opened the door, I stepped out of my red heels and stood rooted to the spot. I knew that with this news, my time had become drastically shortened. The numbness was seeping into my bones, and dark, intrusive thoughts were intensifying. Voices in my mind began to overlap, growing louder and more frantic. Everything is ending. Why do you have to hurt like this? You are not alone. Stop it. Stop it. I whispered to myself, pressing my hands against my head, hoping to quiet the noise and find some silence. Suddenly, the door was violently wrenched open, and Damien came stomping in, his face contorted in fury. He walked up until he was a mere inch from me, his breath fanning across my face as he snarled. I told you I chose my own fate. Did you really think I would choose you? You will never compare to her. I don't want you. Your brother doesn't want you. No one wants you. I let out a pained cry and sank down onto the carpet, wrapping my arms around my legs and rocking back and forth to comfort myself. When I looked up, Damien's figure began to fade like an apparition. I realized it had been a hallucination, more vivid than anything I had experienced before. It had felt so real. I crawled to the nearest corner of my room, buried my head in my knees, and let the numbness engulf me. Before I could calm down, black spots invaded my vision, and I passed out into oblivion. Alex's POV. Abby and I were smiling and clapping for Damien and Rachel when I turned to look at my sister. My hand froze mid-clap as I watched a single tear fall down her face. Her expression was completely blank, even as she continued to clap. It was as if she were in shock. Over the last year, I had been getting more and more worried about her. She had become introverted, secluding herself from the pack. I knew she must be lonely, watching all her friends find their partners while she remained alone. I just never realized the depth of her grief. That tear was evidence enough, and I wished there was something I could do to help. Leilani had always been good at acting happy, but I knew her well enough to suspect it wasn't from the heart. Tonight, when she first came downstairs, I had seen a glimpse of true warmth in her, but it had vanished the moment Damien made his announcement. With the increase in rogue attacks, I had less free time to spend with her. I decided I would speak with Damien tomorrow and ask for a day off. She was my only family besides Abby, and I needed to make her a priority. As Abby and I went to congratulate the couple, I noticed Leilani retreating toward the house. She paused at the door and looked back toward the table. She wasn't looking at me, she was looking at Damien with an expression of profound sadness. I promised myself then and there that I would do everything in my power to find her the happiness she deserved. Damien's POV. Pack members were surrounding Rachel and me, offering congratulations. Rachel smiled sweetly, though she leaned in to whisper judgmental comments about the guests into my ear. As much as I loved her, I disliked her tendency to be scathing toward others when she thought no one was listening. It was taxing at times, but I usually chalked it up to the pressure of her position. As I leaned down to listen to her, I noticed Leilani at the back door. Our eyes locked again. For a second, I allowed my walls to drop and took in her beauty, but then I noticed the slight frown, the bead of sweat on her forehead, and the deep sorrow in her eyes. It looked like an abyss of devastation before her expression went completely blank. She turned away and walked inside, moving away from me just as I had moved away from her. A few minutes later, I heard a gut-wrenching sound, a pained, internal cry that sounded like someone's spirit was breaking. I looked around, furrowing my brows, trying to find where it had come from. When I noticed no one else had reacted, I turned to Rachel and Alex. "Did you guys hear that?" "Hear what?" they both asked at the same time. "Oh, nothing," I muttered. I guess it was just my imagination. Chapter 9. I am not sure how long I sat in the corner, but my body was stiff from being in the same position for too long. Using the wall for support, I forced myself to stand. My legs protested, muscles cramping with every move. Once I was steady enough, I took a few steps toward the bathroom. I let the straps of my dress slide down, letting the fabric pull around my feet. I walked to the bathtub and turned the knobs, waiting for the water to heat. While it filled, I turned toward the mirror. My makeup was streaming down my face from my tears, staining my cheeks. My eyes were dull, and my hair was a disheveled mess. The diamond pin I had used earlier was hanging limply, entangled in my hair. I tried to untangle it with shaking fingers, but as my frustration boiled over, I simply yanked it out, taking a clump of hair with it. The anger intensified. I watched as my hands fisted and my nails dug into my palms. My inner distress was manifesting physically, my grip so tight that I broke the skin. I began panicking, trying to calm myself down, but the more I tried, the more I lost control. The self-inflicted wounds on my hands began to bleed, evidence of the internal storm I couldn't contain. Suddenly, the tension snapped, and I quickly turned on the faucet to wash away the blood. I had no control over this rage, nothing mattered but the overwhelming hurt. As the water cleared, I turned it off. Looking at my hands, I saw the wounds were already starting to close, though I knew it would take longer than usual, given how weak I had become. Sighing, I turned toward the tub. I lowered my body into the water, closed my eyes, and rested my head against the edge. I tried to relax, but thinking back over the events of the night caused the anger to surge again. I felt a darkness festering inside of me, and for a moment, everything seemed to turn red. I watched in a daze as the distress took hold of me. In a blur of movement, I felt as though I were being torn apart from the inside. I looked down at the water, which seemed to turn dark with my pain. I closed my eyes tightly, and when I reopened them, the water was clear again. I wasn't sure if it had been a dream or another vivid hallucination, but the experience terrified me. Deciding the bath was enough, I began to climb out of the water when a sharp, searing pain slammed into my abdomen. Unprepared and unsteady, I slipped, falling hard onto the floor tiles. My head hit the ground with a force that caused a ringing in my ears, but that was nothing compared to the agony blooming in my stomach. On my hands and knees, dripping with water, I tried to crawl toward my bed. I knew I wouldn't make it before the pain forced a sound from my throat. I grabbed a towel from the rack and bit down on it just in time to stifle a cry. The pressure in my jaw was immense. I collapsed onto my side in a fetal position. Dark marks began to appear on my pale skin, spreading like ink in water. Then, painful shocks traveled through my spine, causing my body to contort and shake. This went on for hours. At times, the intensity caused me to lose consciousness, only to be jolted awake by the next wave. It was all-consuming. Tears leaked from my eyes as a razor-sharp sensation sliced across my neck. It felt as though I were being marked by a dull blade. It was then that I realized that somewhere else, the final bond was being sealed between Damien and Rachel. At that very moment, my mind snapped, and I lost myself to the darkness. Chapter 10. Damien's POV. It had been a week since my engagement to Rachel. A week since I had marked her as mine and made her officially the Luna of my pack. Although the man in me felt a sense of duty and pride, my inner wolf did not. I remember the conflict within me, a moment of deep hesitation before I committed to the mark. As soon as the bond was sealed, my wolf lashed out internally. It took every ounce of my training and control to keep him from reacting toward Rachel. She hadn't noticed my internal struggle and fell asleep contentedly in my arms. Thinking my wolf simply needed time to adjust to my choice, I tried to give him space. But as the days passed, he continued to war with me, snarling at the physical evidence of the bond. He seemed distant, retreating into the recesses of my mind. I knew that eventually he would have to submit to my will, but a destined bond is a powerful thing, and I knew it would take time to fade. During the week, I had seen little of Leilani. A part of me was concerned. I knew she was suffering because of my decisions, and though I was being firm in my path, I felt a twinge of selfishness. I hoped that by marking Rachel, the old connection with Leilani would slowly wither, allowing her to find a partner of her own choosing. The few times I caught a glimpse of her, my concern only grew. She had taken to wearing dark hoodies almost daily, always with the hood up to hide her face. Alex had come to my office the day before, asking for a few days off to spend with her. Though I hadn't agreed immediately, I knew I needed to let him go. He could offer her the comfort that I could not. I turned in my chair and stared out the window, noticing a hooded figure exiting the woods. I knew it was Leilani. It was a little after 6:30 in the evening, and the sky was darkening after a day of intermittent rain. There was just enough light for me to see her clearly as she walked toward the house. Her hood had slipped down, and she didn't seem to notice. Her hair was soaked, and her movements were mechanical and stiff. Her skin, once pale and iridescent, looked almost gray, as if she were ill. Just then, her eyes darted up toward my window. I knew she likely couldn't see me behind the screen, but her gaze made me incredibly uncomfortable. For a fleeting second, her expression seemed twisted and unfamiliar, a cold smile that didn't belong on her face. I shook it off, assuming I was simply overtaxed with alpha duties. I couldn't imagine Leilani as anything other than kind. Just as I turned away, a loud knock sounded at the door, and Alex rushed in. "Damien, there's another rogue attack on the southern border. Our scouts report that 2 of our warriors are down. We need to go, now. Let's go." On the way out, I instructed the guards to ensure Rachel and Leilani were protected and to make sure no one left the house until we returned. Rushing out, Alex and I shifted into our wolf forms. As an alpha, I was twice the size of most others, with fur as black as night and glowing green eyes. Alex, my beta, ran at my side, his russet fur blurred as we pushed ourselves to reach the border. We could see the fighting in the distance. The scene was devastating. Bodies of our own were scattered across the ground, the violence of the attack clear in the aftermath. I watched as Alex was ambushed from the right, pinned to the ground by a rogue. I moved to help him, but I was tackled as well. We fought for our lives. I snapped at my attacker, catching its neck in my jaws. The rogue was persistent, its teeth sinking into my side and tearing at me, but I didn't let go. I shook it with all my strength until it went limp at my feet. The creature looked horrific, its fur was gone, its skin stretched over bone, looking more like a monster from a nightmare than a wolf. I turned to find Alex, who had just finished off his own attacker. His fur was stained with the foul-smelling evidence of the struggle. We both charged back into the fray. 30 minutes later, the last of the attackers were gone. There had only been 15 of them, but they had caused immense damage. We had lost over 40 of our own. These creatures were far more dangerous than any standard rogue. They fought with a ferocity that seemed unnatural. My pack couldn't sustain many more hits like this. I needed to understand what they were and how they had changed. Before I could process the loss, I noticed 4 of my strongest warriors surrounding a thrashing figure. For the first time, we had managed to capture one alive. "Take him to the prisoner's vault, now," I ordered. I turned to Alex and told him to return to the house to ensure everyone was safe. I instructed him to alert the neighboring alphas and the pack doctor. Perhaps now, with a prisoner to inspect, I would finally get the answers I needed. Chapter 11. Damien's POV. Alex had rushed back to the house as I had instructed, while I remained in the field. I spent the time securing the border and arranging for the bodies of my fallen pack members to be transported back for proper burial. There were so many families I would have to notify. It was a devastating blow to our community whenever one of us died, but with more than 40 perishing, the weight on me as Alpha was immense. I felt for the parents, partners, and children who would go to sleep tonight having lost someone they loved. They gave their lives protecting the pack under my orders, a reality I would never get used to. After I gave orders regarding the fallen and the disposal of the attackers, I made my way to the detention facility located in the northern area of my territory. For all those we had lost, I at least had something to show for it. A subject to study and observe to find a solution to our problems. The facility was a cold, remote concrete building, lacking any adornment. It was a place for those not welcome on my land. Stepping up to the front, I waited as the perimeter gate slid open and nodded to a guard as I walked inside. After turning through several corridors, I arrived at the high security area and watched as the prisoner I had captured paced in its cell. It had not yet noticed my presence, allowing me time to observe. It had shifted back into a form that was vaguely human, though the term felt loose. Its skin was gray and translucent, showing the veins beneath. The creature walked with a hunched back and bent knees, its eyes scanning the cell. When it finally noticed me, it turned its gaze my way. Its eyes were solid black, lacking any white. It opened its mouth in a snarl, revealing teeth that were all jagged and sharp. Claws protruded from its hands and feet. It looked like a being caught in a permanent, distorted state of transition. It sniffed the air and reached through the bars, swiping at me with a frantic need to reach its target. I watched with a heavy heart as it tipped its head back and let out a horrific, piercing cry. It was the sound of a nightmare, filled with a primal distress that chilled me to the bone. I turned away and left for my house, still shivering from what I had witnessed. I hoped to somehow erase the unease that had crept into my soul. As my house came into view, I noticed several vehicles parked out front. Knowing who they belonged to, I stepped inside and went immediately to my office. As the door opened, I saw the 6 alphas I had summoned, along with their betas and our pack doctor. They all turned toward me expectantly. I had instructed Alex via our link not to tell them anything until I arrived. "Gentlemen, thank you for coming. I apologize for the wait. I had to oversee the recovery of my pack members, and it took longer than anticipated. Please, have a seat so I can explain why you are here." As they sat, I told the story of the attack, the losses, and the prisoner I now held. I watched as their expressions shifted from rage and sadness to curiosity. They had all been affected by similar incursions recently. The common link was that we all shared borders. Those further away remained unaffected. We had all suffered, and none of us had answers. "So you are telling us that you captured one alive?" asked Scott Winterstone, Alpha of the Blood Rune Pack. You are correct. It is currently being held in our facility. Now, this is why Stephen, our doctor, has been summoned. I am sure everyone here agrees that we need to know more about this creature, what it is and how it changed. The alphas and betas nodded in agreement. Stephen left the room with a firm nod. He was headed to the facility to begin his inspection. I hoped that soon I would have the answers to end this conflict and ensure the safety of all our packs. A few questions were asked before the visitors took their leave. Once the last one had gone, I turned to Alex. Alex, we will discuss more tomorrow. It has been a long night. I imagine you want nothing more than to be with Abby. Yes, I do. Thanks, Damien. I'm just going to check on Leilani before I head out. Link me if you need anything. Alex left my office, and I followed him out. We walked together toward the stairs, parting at the landing. He went toward Leilani's room, and I went toward Rachel's. It felt strange, though, how much I wanted to follow Alex to make sure Leilani was all right. Chapter 12. It is like watching a horror movie featuring yourself. You do not have control of the script or the characters, you are simply following a path someone else has written. That is how I feel as I stand at my window, watching the alphas of the surrounding territories enter their vehicles and depart. I stand there with my hood up, my hand resting on the fabric of the curtain, moving it aside just enough to look out. The darkness sharing my body is in control right now, and I am a mere passenger. It watches and waits for something I do not understand, surveying the area as if planning its next move. I hear footsteps approaching my door and know it is Alex. He knocks softly. Leilani, are you awake? He asks. He waits a moment before his footsteps retreat. I want so badly to answer him, to scream for help, but the influence over me won't allow it. It takes hold of me mostly at night, but recently it has begun to claim my days as well. When I am not under its control, I am haunted by vivid, intrusive thoughts of harm and chaos. I see images of blood and suffering, and the voices surrounding me grow stronger with each passing day. I know now that my time is very limited. There is so much I want to say and do before I leave, so many things I don't want to miss. I have to ensure I complete what I promised myself before I am too far gone. I have given myself one last week, just 7 days to say my goodbyes and tell people I love them. There is no more time after that. This is not a fairy tale where a hero comes to save the day. My story has taken a different path, leaving me in the cold. I should be angry. I should want to lash out at the person who caused this, but I don't. To love someone fully is to want them to be happy, and my affection for Damien runs so deep that I only hope for his peace, even if it isn't with me. Despite the suffering I have endured over the last 2 years, I cannot bring myself to hate him. It is the overwhelming power of a love that was never returned in the way I needed. Realizing I have control of myself again, I walk to the bathroom and lower my hood to look at my reflection. My eyes have sunken into my face, their gray color darkening as the days pass. My hair, once thick and healthy, is now thin and stringy. My skin has turned an ashen gray. Dark circles surround my eyes that no amount of makeup can conceal. I look like a shell of the woman I once was. It has been less than 2 weeks since the final bond was broken, and in that time I have deteriorated quickly. Knowing I have much to do in these 7 days, I sit on my bed. I pull a picture of my mother, father, Alex, and me from the nightstand drawer, a photo taken the week before my parents died. I run my finger over their smiling faces, remembering the good times. Setting it aside, I take out a pad of paper and a pen. I want to write letters for the people I love, to be read when I am gone. As I finish the letters, I fold them and place them into envelopes, addressing each one and sealing them. I place the writing supplies and the letters back into the drawer and close it. I lie down on top of the sheets and try to sleep. I realize that since that final night, I haven't felt the physical pain that usually comes when Damien is with Rachel. I am not sure if I should be relieved, but I know it is just another sign that my time is coming to an end. He's close. I can feel him. Chapter 13. Damien's POV. It had been 3 days since we captured that thing. 3 days of Stephen studying it and 3 days of no answers. Every day, I sat in my office waiting for him to walk in and give me something to work with. There was nothing I could do but wait. Since answers weren't coming quickly, I had allowed Alex a few days of respite to spend with Leilani. His worry for her was palpable. If I were being honest with myself, I was worried too. I secretly watched her from afar and noticed how her appearance had changed over the last week. Each day, she looked more tired, the light she used to carry dimming a little more. My guilt was at an all-time high. I questioned if my decision to reject her had anything to do with her decline in health. I didn't know the severity of what rejection did to a Leilani. I had never encountered it before. I had contacted several packs across the nation, asking if they knew of any lasting effects of rejection, but I always came up empty. It was unheard of in our generation. Lycans simply didn't reject their destined mates. To the outside world, I hadn't rejected mine either. The only person who knew the truth was Leilani. It felt unfair for her to suffer. Questions bounced around my mind, popping up one after another before I could answer them. Was I being selfish? Should I have followed the path mapped out for me? Should I have followed my heart or my mind? Could I ever care for Leilani in the same way I cared for Rachel? I was confused. I loved Rachel, but I cared for Leilani too, though I had always told myself it was in the way one cares for a sister. Had I even given us a chance? My guilt tripled as I realized I hadn't. I had been too focused on my own wants. I had made her feel like she wasn't enough because I chose someone else. I felt a wave of regret for being so cold. Just as I was lost in thought, I heard a sharp knock. Stephen walked in. Damien, glad you are here. Hello, Stephen. Have a seat. Thank you. You know why I'm here. I think I have some answers for you, though not all. First, let me state that in my professional opinion, whatever this creature is now, it started its life as a Leilani. They were someone's brother, sister, mother, or friend. You must understand this first. I nodded and waited for him to continue. Now that we know it started as a Leilani, I'm still at a loss as to what it has become. I've done blood work countless times, and there are no signs of infection. I've scanned the creature from head to toe, and there are no abnormal growths. All tests come back as if it were a normal Leilani. But as you can see, there is obviously something seriously wrong. I just cannot find it physically. I looked at him, confused. Nothing at all? Nothing, Damien. All its levels are normal. However, whatever this creature is, it seems to go into a dormant phase, completely immobile. Only when it is stimulated will it reanimate. It lacks any form of humanity, reasoning, or empathy. Its purpose, it seems, is to hunt and kill our kind. Its body has adapted for added strength, speed, and advanced healing. Whatever it used to be is gone. In my opinion, you should contact the elders. These creatures are dangerous, and if they aren't contained, our pack and the Leilani race could be at risk. I sat there for a few minutes absorbing the gravity of his words. Calling the elders was a massive step, reserved only for dire straits. Are you absolutely positive we should contact them? Without a doubt, Damien. We must act now. One last thing, I noticed this creature has a specific marking etched on the back of its neck. I drew it for you. He slid a piece of paper toward me. Thank you, Stephen. You may go, but please stay close. I will need you if the elders have questions. I watched him leave. I looked down at the drawing, wondering what the symbol meant. For the first time in my life, I felt truly helpless. Unknown POV. I stood in front of Damien's door, listening to his conversation with the doctor. I cannot let him contact the elders. It would ruin all my plans and expose my secrets. I will not lose what I have worked for. I must come up with a plan before everything falls apart. Chapter 14. 4. Today my number is 4. 4 days left to live, to laugh, and to love. 4 more days to smile, to cherish, and to make memories with my brother. 4 days to fit a lifetime in. Tomorrow, my number will be 3, but today, it is 4. I had spent the last few days with Alex since Damien had given him time off from his duties. And what a glorious 3 days it had been. We had reverted back to being children, pranks, laughter, and fun. Sometimes, when he wasn't looking, the sadness overwhelmed me. I would watch him and feel tears form in my eyes, but I always wiped them away before he could see, choosing to laugh at whatever he said to me. Although my days were filled with these moments, my nights were still claimed by the entity that lived where my soul used to be. Last night, it had reached a pinnacle. I watched as if from above as the influence over me took hold. I watched in horror as a sharp silver blade was used on the back of my neck. A sneer appeared on my face in the mirror as a voice spoke to me. "Are you ready for us, Leilani? Enjoy your freedom while it lasts, because he will be here soon." I felt a searing pain at the base of my neck that lasted for hours. Even now, the mark was there, hidden by my hair, just like I had hidden everything else from the world. When I was finally allowed to sleep, it was not restful. Every dream was a cycle of memories designed to hurt, moments of Damien and Rachel together, the words Damien said the day I found out we were destined, and the internal fire I felt every time he chose her. The last dream was the worst. It was a vision of me begging for acceptance, only for him to turn away and walk into Rachel's arms, knowing his choice meant my end. He still chose her. I would never be the first choice. I woke up determined to create moments with my brother. I wasn't making memories for myself, but for him, memories he could look back on and smile about long after I was gone. Memories he could share with the children he and Abby would have. I realized then that I would miss out on so many things. I would never experience the milestones of a full life, my 21st birthday, driving a car, or seeing the ocean. I would never know the experience of a life growing within me. I would miss all those firsts. The first smiles, the first words, and the first steps. So many things I couldn't accomplish. Would I have done more if I had known my destiny sooner? No. I had no regrets. I wouldn't change anything that had happened, not even the rejection. Through it, I had learned the meaning of unconditional love and how to live as if every day were my last. The irony was that these truly were my last days. At that moment, a cold splash of water hit the side of my head. I looked over to see my brother aiming a water gun at me, a mischievous grin on his face. Laughing, I took after him to exact my revenge. Just before I reached him, I looked toward the house and saw Damien and Rachel together. The sharp sting of the sight caused me to falter, and I tumbled to the ground. I refused to let them ruin this day. I was determined to enjoy 4 with my brother. Especially knowing I didn't have enough time. Chapter 15. Damien's POV. I watched as Leilani chased Alex around the front yard, trying to tackle him. I chuckled to myself. It had been a good idea to give Alex these days off. Leilani's spirit seemed to have lifted over the last few days spent with her brother. Although her appearance had not improved, her temperament seemed to. I hadn't realized how long it had been since I heard her laugh until the sound floated up through an open window. I had forgotten how musical it was, and how easily it could make me smile. I had taken her laughter for granted when we were children. Hearing it now after such a long absence made me feel a sense of relief I didn't expect. As I watched the siblings together, I felt arms encircle my waist from behind. I knew it was Rachel. It was strange how this simple act used to give me complete comfort, yet lately, its power to soothe my stress seemed to have diminished. I needed to shake myself out of this slump. I needed to make peace with the situation regarding Leilani and ensure she was happy. Maybe then everything would get back to normal, and I could move on with my life with Rachel. "Hey, baby, what are you doing over here by yourself?" Just watching Alex and his sister goofing off out front. I felt her arms stiffen. Noticing how tense she had become, I turned around and wrapped my arms around her waist. "What's wrong, love?" "You are always busy now, with so little free time," she said, her voice rising. "And instead of spending it with me, you're watching her. You still feel a pull toward her, don't you?" I watched as her face contorted in a rare moment of anger. But just as quickly as the outburst came, it faded into sadness. "I am so sorry, Damien. I don't know what's wrong with me lately. I feel like I am losing you," she said, sobbing softly into her hands. "I will always care for you. Remember, nothing will change that. Promise me, Damien. Promise to stay with me." "I promise." "Just you," I stated, though the words felt heavier than they used to. I looked down at her, taking in her beauty, but it seemed a little less vibrant than I remembered. Again, I attributed the feeling to my own lingering guilt. "Heart, I need to head downstairs. I have an important call to make in 5 minutes. I promise that after the call, I will come back and we can spend the rest of the day together. Okay?" "Damien, can't the call wait? I need you right now. Please?" "I'm sorry, but I can't. I have to be there. You know how important my duties are. That call is obviously more important than I am." I sighed. "I cannot neglect my duties as alpha, even for you." "Fine, do whatever you want." I watched her walk away and heard the bedroom door slam. I knew she was upset, but I didn't have time to sort it out right then. I had to make this call. The safety of my pack depended on it. If what Steven said was correct, I had little time to act before the situation became uncontrollable. I walked into my office and locked the door. I sat at my desk and opened the video conference application on my laptop, waiting for the incoming call. The only sound was the rhythmic ticking of the clock on the mantel. Finally, the alert sounded, and 3 stately figures appeared on my screen with solemn expressions. "Alpha Damien, I presume?" "Yes. This is Alpha Damien of the Mountain Meadow Pack. Thank you for speaking with me. What is it that you wish to speak about so urgently, Alpha?" "Your doctor's request for a meeting indicated a matter of life and death." I began relaying everything that had been happening, the battles, the losses, and Steven's observations from a few days ago. I explained that we were dealing with something we didn't understand and showed them the drawing of the symbol Steven had found. I watched as concern washed over their faces. "And you say you have one being held captive right now?" "Yes, I do." "Very well. We must research our archives for answers. In the meantime, Elder Alec will leave for your territory immediately. One of us needs to see this creature firsthand. It will take him 2 days to arrive. Hopefully, we can solve this mystery. Be safe, Damien." "Thank you," I stated, bowing to the men on the screen. Unknown POV. 2 days weren't enough time to do what I needed to do. So much to do, so little time. And I could still feel the call. Chapter 16. I woke up to the feeling of sunlight filtering through my window, warming my cheek with its rays. I could hear the sounds of birds chirping in the background, slowly waking me from my slumber. I turned my head toward the window, viewing the tops of the trees and the crystal blue sky. That's when I realized there were no more days left for me. No more time. All the time I had left was to experience my lasts, not my firsts. My last sunset. My last breath. My last heartbeat. My last smile. My last tear. And finally, my final goodbye. I felt tears slowly seeping from my eyes, sliding down to be absorbed by my sheets. The house was still quiet, as it was just past dawn. I knew I had to get ready quickly, before anyone could see me. I got out of bed and fixed the covers for the last time, hoping to make things a little easier for whoever would eventually clean the room. I walked to the shower and bathed one last time, taking a moment to enjoy the feeling of the warm water. Afterward, I walked to my closet and pulled the black dress my brother had bought me from its hanger. I let my fingers caress the fabric, loving how soft and delicate it felt. I placed it on the bed and ran my hand over it to smooth out the wrinkles, wanting to make sure it was perfect. I hadn't known when I first received it that this beautiful dress would be what I wore as I took my final breath. I padded to my dresser, feeling the thick carpet cushion my feet. I stood there for a moment, sinking my toes into the softness. It is interesting how your senses seem to heighten when you know the end is coming. I was hyper-aware of everything around me, absorbing the small things that most people take for granted. I dressed carefully, and once I was ready, I caught my reflection in the mirror. My hair hung loosely around my shoulders with the morning light streaming in behind me, casting a soft glow. I looked at myself, silently wondering about the life I could have had in another world. I shook the thoughts away and walked back into the bathroom. I brushed my hair until it was smooth, then returned to my vanity. Looking closely in the mirror, I saw every detail of my face. I didn't look as terrible as I felt, though I lacked the vibrancy I had when I last wore this dress. I applied my lipstick and walked to the nightstand. I took the letters I had written to Damien and Alex, along with the silver blade I had kept hidden. I placed the letters neatly on my pillow, running my hand over them one last time before taking in the room for the final time. Seeing the picture of my family, I placed a kiss on my fingers and rested them on the photo. With that final act, I opened my door and walked barefoot through the house, the dagger in my hand. I heard the first stirrings of movement as I crept down the stairs. It wouldn't be long before the house came alive with activity. I needed to leave as quietly and quickly as possible. As I exited through the back door to head to my meadow, I took one last look back, tears streaming down my face. The soft wind blew my hair across my face as my feet sank into the dew-laden grass. I looked up to Damien's office window, imagining him standing there, smiling down at me. A small smile touched my lips, and I turned around to begin my final walk through the woods. "Goodbye, my love," I whispered, walking away from the only life I had known. I left then, ready to find my destiny. Chapter 17. Damien's POV. I stood by our bed, looking down at Rachel's sleeping form. Even in sleep, she seemed to reach for me, having moved to my side of the bed as I dressed for the day. It was in moments like this that she looked the most beautiful, vulnerable and needing me. I reminded myself how lucky I was to be loved by her. She was the woman I had chosen. I had given her my promise. So why did it feel as if my heart belonged to another as well? I was caught between two women, and my internal conflict was hurting both. Rachel was still shielded by her ignorance of my struggle, but neither of them deserved this. Every day, the guilt intensified. I could feel a part of my soul calling out for Leilani, a connection I couldn't seem to sever. I felt like a man standing on the tracks of a runaway train. I was a selfish bastard, but I had always prided myself on keeping my word. Rachel had my promises, even if Leilani had a piece of my heart. I leaned down and placed a light kiss on Rachel's forehead, whispering how much I loved her. She smiled in her sleep, snuggling deeper into the covers, and I headed out to start the day. The house was eerily quiet, but I had to prepare for Elder Alex's arrival. As I reached my office, I caught a flash of movement outside near the tree line where I had seen Leilani so often. A twinkle of light caught my eye for a second before vanishing. I dismissed it, turning my attention to the paperwork on my desk. I'm not sure how much time passed before a knock at the door broke my concentration. Alex stood in the doorway with an older gentleman. "Damien, Elder Alec has just arrived." "Thank you, Alex." "Please, come in, Alec." "Just Alec, please," the elder said as he stepped inside. "And I think we should not waste time. I would prefer to see the prisoner at once. I need to confirm the council's suspicions." "Yes, of course. This way." We arrived at the facility and entered the secure area. As we approached the cell, the creature snapped its head in my direction. Again, it lunged at the bars, snarling with a primal hatred. Alex's eyes widened. "I must get a closer look at the symbol on its neck," he whispered. I instructed 4 guards to restrain the creature. As they pinned it to the floor, Alec knelt down to inspect the mark. It is what I feared, he said, standing slowly. He turned to me with an expression of grave seriousness. It is a fallen, Damien. A fallen? What is that? Our own kind caused this, Alex sighed, looking at the creature with disappointment. Our ancestors' actions created them. Obviously, the elders have been too lax in teaching our history. Do you remember being taught the importance of destined mates? Yes, but I don't see what mates have to do with this, I replied, my frustration growing at the mention of a topic I had been trying to avoid. Then you weren't taught enough, Alex said firmly. In our ancient past, a plague of these creatures decimated our population. They are the personification of a broken bond. They are created when a destined mate is rejected for another. I felt the air leave my lungs. When a mate is rejected, Alec continued, his voice rising, the pain and torment take root in their soul. Every time the one they were meant for is with someone else, it causes an agony you cannot imagine. It eventually breaks them. That creature is what remains when a soul is crushed by the selfishness of its other half. We are both the cause and the only potential preventative. I flinched back, gasping. Images of Leilani flashed through my mind. Her musical laugh, her sad, desperate eyes, her fading health. All the clues I had been too blind to see. This was the future I had presented to her. This was her reward for loving me. Can they be changed back? I asked, my voice trembling. If the bond is accepted? No, Alex said solemnly. Once they have become fallen, there is no turning back. The only outcomes are that, or death. That is why the bond is sacred. The consequence of ignoring it is the destruction of a life. I have to go. I have to go, I repeated, backing out of the room. The only thing on my mind was Leilani. I prayed I wasn't too late. I saw now that she was my destiny, the one I truly cared for. I had let my pride and my own narrow wants stand in the way. She had suffered silently while putting me first every single time. I am coming for you, I whispered, breaking into a run toward the house. Unknown POV. You will never leave me. You are mine. And he will ensure it. He is so close now. Chapter 18. Damien's POV. I frantically burst through the front door of the pack house. The door opened with such force that it ricocheted off the wall, the loud bang echoing through the foyer. Rushing forward, I saw Alex, his expression one of pure shock. Where is she, Alex? Where is who? Your sister. Leilani. Upstairs in her room, probably. Why? What's wrong? I saw Alex's panic begin to rise as he felt my anxiety, but I didn't have time to explain. Not until I held Leilani in my arms and knew I could fix this. I ran up the stairs, taking them two at a time with Alex in hot pursuit. I slammed open her door, but the room was empty. I called her name over and over, checking the bathroom, but there was no sign of her. What's wrong, Damien? Alex demanded. I have to find her. I have to. Just as I was about to rush back out, my eyes caught two white envelopes resting on her bed. I walked over and saw our names written on them. Alex reached for his as I grabbed mine. I tore into the envelope and began to read. Letter to Alexander. My dearest brother. Remember the day Mom and Dad died? Remember the promise we made to protect one another? I am sorry I couldn't keep that promise, Alex. I am so very sorry for breaking it. I would give anything to have been able to stay, but I couldn't. Please know that you never failed me. I do not want you to blame yourself for my ending. If you love me, you will try to understand that I made this decision on my own. I wish I didn't have to cause you pain, but this was the path laid out for me. I want you to live a full life, one filled with joy and laughter. Promise me you will live for both of us. Tell Abby how much I will miss her friendship and how happy I am that you found her. Thank you for being my brother. I was truly blessed to have you. Your beloved sister. Leilani. Letter to Damien. Damien. I wish our future could have been together. I wish I had been enough for you. Rejection has consequences that change the very soul, and I didn't want to lose who I was to the darkness. I chose to end my story while I was still myself. I have never asked anything of you, but I am now. Please forgive yourself. Do not place blame for what has happened. While the rejection led to this, I choose to believe this was the destiny intended for me. I hope you will remember me as your best friend, the girl who followed you and Alex around when we were kids. I have loved you forever, and as I take my last breath, I will be wishing for your happiness. Thank you for teaching me how to love unconditionally. I let you go now so that you can find peace. Your best friend, Leilani. Damien's POV continued. As I finished the letter, my hand went limp, and the paper drifted to the floor. Beside me, Alex let out a roar of agony before dropping to his knees, consumed by grief. I was shattered, my mind racing with the realization of what I had done. But before I could succumb to the weight of it, I remembered the twinkling light I had seen from my office window this morning. It must have been her. Without a word to Alex or to Rachel, who was calling out to me from the hallway, I bolted from the house. I reached the tree lean and shifted instantly into my black wolf. Instinct took over as I picked up her scent, and I bounded into the forest. I pushed myself to run faster than I ever had before, praying that I wasn't too late to stop the permanent consequences of my pride. Unknown POV. I watched as the large black wolf entered the forest. I am angry that he found his answers, but I am coming for what is mine. If I can't have him, no one will. He is coming with me. Chapter 19. Sitting here in the middle of my meadow, the sun casts a spotlight on me. My legs are tucked under me as I sit on the ground, the train of my dress pooling around my feet. It is like having the night sky at my feet and the sun above. The jewels of my dress cause the rays of sunlight to refract around me, creating little spots of white light that dance in the air. The soft blades of grass are cool to the touch. I have been here for a few hours, just savoring the last moments of this life, watching as monarch butterflies skip from flower to flower. I pick up the blade that I laid in the grass when I first arrived. I slide my index finger across the edge, feeling the cold metal and ignoring the slight stinging sensation. With the dagger still in my hand, I lie down on my back. Looking up at the sky, a single tear escapes. I wish I had been able to see Alex, Abby, and Damien one last time. I hope they understand. I hope they live. I let the memories of Damien cross my mind, of him swimming with my brother and me as kids, the smiles he used to give me, and how we used to laugh. Then, I let myself imagine the alternate ending I could have had with him. The life that might have been if I had truly been his. I imagine us lying in this same meadow, him smiling down at me, leaning in to kiss me, and speaking words of love and promises of forever. If only. If only. As I let the last of my what-ifs evaporate from my mind, I lift my arms above me, the dagger in my right hand. I make the final choice to free myself from the darkness that has been trying to take over. I feel a lightness in my head as my strength begins to fade. I sink the blade deep into my chest and leave it there, the silver ensuring that the transformation into a fallen can never be completed. I feel the pain take over my body, the silver burning as it stops the shadow from claiming me. My breathing becomes shallow and hitched. I can feel my heartbeat slowing, becoming less and less strong. I hear my inner self let out one last sound before going quiet. The end is coming. My eyes become heavy, and the last conscious thought I have is of the person who was always there, Damien. Before his face can fully fade and I lose my vision, I lift my hand toward the image my mind has conjured for me. Using the last of my strength and breath, I whisper to him. I will love you for eternity. I take a part of you with me. And with that, the darkness consumes me, with Damien as the last thing I ever think about. Chapter 20. Damien's POV. My paws pounded into the ground as I jumped over fallen logs, pushing my wolf to go faster. Her scent was becoming stronger the further I ran. That was when I saw the trees thinning out and noticed the meadow with the twinkling light coming from it. I was close to her, I could see her. I was within reach. My inner self cried out with relief. Only 50 or so yards to go before I could fix everything. I could hold her in my arms, make new promises, and forge new memories. I could show her the love she deserved. It was all within my grasp. I thought I had gotten to her in time. I didn't notice her arms reaching for the sky at first, and I didn't see the blade until it was too late. It wasn't until I saw the red pooling down her arms that I realized something was wrong. I was maybe 10 yards away when I saw her sink the knife into her chest. A cry of anguish erupted from my throat. Sliding to a halt beside her, I quickly shifted into my human form. Leilani, stay with me. You cannot leave me. Please stay. I watched as her eyes fluttered open for a brief moment, and she smiled. Lifting her hand to my face, I heard her say in a small, fading voice, I will love you for eternity. I take a part of you with me. I lifted her limp body in my arms and pulled her close, cradling her and rocking back and forth. Her arms hung at her sides, and her beautiful dress was now stained. As I held her, I told her everything I wished I had said, how much I loved her, how beautiful she was, and how much I regretted wasting precious time. I begged her not to leave me, even though I knew it was too late. I had failed her. I asked for her forgiveness as the warmth began to leave her body. I couldn't save her. I couldn't change the outcome. I had lost her before I ever truly had her. It was my fault, no matter what her letter said. I would carry that blame with me forever. Knowing that I could never love another, I realized I would spend the rest of my life alone. My heart was spoken for, it would forever be owned by her. Cradling her one last time, I gently placed her back on the ground and kissed her forehead. Tears streamed down my face as my grief took over. Distraught and barely understanding my own actions, I reached out and pulled the dagger from her body, wanting only to remove the source of her pain, even though she could no longer feel it. I placed my head in the crook of her neck and wept for the loss of my beautiful partner and the future we should have had. Chapter 21. Damien's POV. As I rested my head against her neck, I noticed a flickering of movement on her throat, a faint twitching of the skin every few seconds. Hoping that I was not imagining it, a spark of life grew within me. I rested my head against her chest, praying that my hope was true. And there, I heard it, the faintest beat of her heart. She was still alive. I still had time. Picking her up in my arms, I stood, ready to run. I needed to get her back to the house to give her a chance to live. Without her, I would be lost. Time was against me, and this was my only chance for the future I wanted. With her in my arms, I turned to leave. I hadn't noticed anyone else's arrival, but there, stepping out from the shadows of the woods, was Rachel. Hello, baby, she said. Thank God it's you, Rachel. Run ahead and tell the doctor I need him at the house urgently. No, I don't think so, my dear. Her face became completely blank. What do you mean? She needs help immediately. Let her be, then, Rachel replied coldly. She is of no importance. What is wrong with you? You would just stand by? I would. Especially if someone is in the way of what I want. You didn't think I knew she was your mate, did you? I stood there frozen in shock, not understanding the cruelty before me, but knowing I was wasting precious seconds. You knew this whole time? I asked, trying to step around her. This is your last chance, Damien. You can choose me and let her go. Or what, Rachel? You do not place demands on me. Or you won't leave this meadow. If I can't have you, no one can. I turned toward her, seething with anger. My inner self wanted to protect the woman in my arms from the one I thought I had loved. And who was going to stop me? You? I laughed scathingly. I think not. Oh, not me, my dear. But my partner will. He passed away, I countered. You told me that. I lied. One last chance, Damien. She put on a false air of innocence. Never, Rachel, I stated, turning to leave. Her next words stopped me in my tracks, a chill running up my spine. You never asked me about my true mate, Damien. I kept him away from you, but now that you've chosen her, I think I'll let you meet him face to face. It's funny, even after I rejected him, he's still so possessive. If only he hadn't been a lowly warrior, I always deserved an alpha. I saw a figure emerge from the woods to my left. My eyes widened as the realization hit me. The creature, the fallen I had held in my prison, was advancing toward me. I placed Leilani's body softly on the ground and walked away from her, baiting the creature as far away as possible. He can smell me on you, Damien, and he doesn't like it, Rachel cackled. I'm going to enjoy this. Since you made me, Luna, I don't need you anymore. After I am done with him, I am coming for you, Rachel. The creature lunged, shifting into its wolf form. I barely dodged the attack, tumbling forward. I realized I didn't have much time and shifted quickly. As it lunged a second time, I crouched, and it leapt over me. We began circling. My attention was divided between the beast and Leilani. I waited for a sign of its next move. It jumped again, and with my concentration split, I wasn't quick enough to dodge. Its teeth sank into my leg, crushing bone. Twisting my head, I managed to lock my fangs onto its throat, desperately trying to pull it off. I used all my strength to wrench its body away. I pinned it down, my jaw clamped like a vice. We struggled until the threat was finally ended. I limped toward Leilani, only to see Rachel standing over her with the blade I had removed earlier. She was preparing to strike. Despite my injury, I ran and jumped, pinning Rachel to the ground. In my rage and need to protect my mate, I did not stop until the threat she posed was permanently gone. Shifting back into human form, I crawled over to Leilani. Her pulse was still there, faint, but steady. With the last of my strength, I picked her up and carried her back to the house, praying for a miracle and hoping to see her gray eyes open once more. Epilogue. I slowly opened my eyes, waiting for them to adjust. The light was blinding, and I lifted my hand to shield my vision while trying to figure out where I was. Nothing looked familiar. I was in a neutral-toned room, resting on a large bed with dark blue sheets. Confused, I sat up and looked around. Was this what came after? Where was the peace I expected? I moved slightly, and a sharp pain in my chest made me wince. That was when the door opened, and he walked in. His hair was unkempt, his face was covered in several days of growth, and his clothes were rumpled. He held a cup of water in his hand. I watched as his eyes widened, then softened with an emotion I couldn't quite name. Damien? I croaked out. Thank the goddess you are awake, he said, rushing to my side. What happened? Am I gone? No, you're here. And I will spend the rest of my life being grateful for that, he said as he embraced me, kissing my forehead. Leilani, promise me you'll never do that again. Promise me you'll stay. Confused, I looked at him. What about Rachel? Forget about that for now. I will tell you everything once I know you are truly safe. But first, I need you to listen to me. I'm listening, Damien. What's wrong? I placed a hand on his arm, concerned by the raw pain in his voice. I still didn't understand how I was alive, but those questions could wait. Leilani, I care for you with everything I have. Forgive me for my pride. Forgive me for the pain I caused you. My heart beats in time with yours. I need you to know that I have never felt for anyone what I feel for you right now. You are my partner, and you are the only one for me. Finally, I heard the words I had dreamed of for so long. He lifted my face so my eyes met his, watching as tears slowly slid down my cheeks. Please don't cry. It breaks my heart to see you in pain. No, Damien, these are tears of joy. I love you. I watched as he leaned in, and our lips met in a gentle, meaningful kiss. Today was the first day of a new life, the start of new experiences. Now, I felt as though I had all the time in the world to experience them with him. As we pulled apart, he wrapped his arms around me and pulled me against his chest. Resting my head on his shoulder, I thought to myself that I was exactly where I wanted to be. I should have been the happiest I had ever been. Then why did a small part of me feel like something was still wrong?